Welcome to the course. Let's start off with setting everything up. I'm going to show you how you can code yourself, or you can use edit in JS Fiddle if you want to set up a server, but you definitely need a server. So there's two options you have. One is LAMP, and that's the version for Linux, Unix, Mac, or WAMP with a W for Windows. So if you want to set that up, you can go on this site and follow the directions. The other option is to set up Node.js. So if you have either of those set up, you're good to go. And if you don't want to use your own server on your local machine, you can also use JS Fiddle. So you can access this URL to start off with what we're going to do. That way you'll have a good quick way to start coding. But everything's not going to work, because for the router to work, to change sites, to change pages, you will need a server for sure. So that out of the way, for extra details, you can access the Angular documentation at docs.angularjs.org, and anything you want to look up you can find here. Since this will be a quick overview of AngularJS to get you up and running, I'm not going to explain any specific details. So go ahead and let's start. We're going to start with our files here, and right now all you really need is the index.html file, and this is just a boilerplate from HTML5. Nothing special except the document declaration here. And at the minimum, you're going to need this script here from the Angular CDN, and the version I'm working with is 1.218. There's a later version, but it's not stable, it's in beta, so I recommend 1.2.18. So include this into your script, into your header, and that way you'll start. This isn't necessary, this is just a custom Google font I use to make the design a little nicer. And this is the main.css. So if you can start the course with these designs or without them, it's up to you. If you do want to start with them, go back and get them from JS Fiddle. What I have that you just saw in Sublime is right here. And that's that. And here we go, let's start. So at the minimum, you're going to have a body and a div. We're just going to call ID home, because that's what the style I have set to. And in order to start with AngularJS, we're going to initiate a module. Since it is module based, call it any variable, angular.module, and then choose a name like my app. And after that, you need just these brackets, and these are necessary because it's expecting later on when you add different modules, you're going to need this here. Like if you want to add animations, there's a module called ng-animate, so that's what it's there for. And for it to work, you just start off with blank, but eventually you have other stuff in there. Next thing is we're going to add a controller, and some examples online you will see this, like main controller, and that's just shortened version. Function. So that's one way to start a controller, but others will be just like this, function dot my controller. And you don't want to do it this way just because it will be polluting the global variable space of JavaScript. And when you're putting everything here in the variable app, that way it's containing, you're encapsulating your code, so it doesn't conflict with other code if it's going to be a bigger project. And on to the next thing. So here we're just going to declare a variable ABC, say hello there, and for this to work, we're going to add a directive called ng-app, And this can be really anywhere, but it's best to be in the HTML tag because your whole website is going to function as an application like SPA single page app. That's why it's always recommended to put it here. And we're going to match the name, my app. So whatever's here goes here. Now it's initiated, but to see any output, we're going to have to use the scope. The scope is a complex object. It does magic in AngularJS. And it's complex because there's also root scope with child scope, but it's too much for now. So just remember to insert the scope into function. And the scope's responsibility is to take the logic out of your controller and pass it on to your view. So according to the MVC concepts, the model view controller, it's not exactly the same with AngularJS. It's mostly model and view based, but there's other variations of that. So we have called a scope here, and I'm going to create a property. So the scope can have properties, variables, functions. That way they're visible. They can become visible in the view. And we're going to call it for ABC. So now, hello there goes as a string into the scope.abc. And once you're in your HTML, you can use these double gator braces or whatever you want to call them. And with AngularJS, they can hold expressions or the variables and can do a variety of things. So if we just do ABC and load, refresh the page, we can see nothing, because for that to work you also need the controller and the directive here. So Angular has a directive called ngController, and we're going to do the same thing as ngapp, except pass the controller name into here, main ctrl, save it, and now you go back to your page and you have hello there. So whenever you see that, that means AngularJS is working. Alright, and on to the next example. Okay, with this next example here, we're just going to jump and do something different than most other tutorials, and that's to show you how page changes work using the ng-route directive. So in this case, we will delete what we have here and use a new ng directive called ngView. And now go to create, or just do an empty HTML file and type this out, what you're seeing exactly was not what I'm doing. Enter questions, total questions, B, and also create a file called main, and in the main file just do this, a div with one intro to Angular, yes, quiz demo, close that. So now we have create main and create and do play, create a file called play. So that's just gonna be a div with class flip, call it question, and that's that div, close it. So now you have these 4 files, and the next directive I'm going to show you with AngularJS is how to set up configuration of a router that's going to change the pages for you, and you'll have those neat URLs, like it'll be just play without the .html and create. So here's how to do that. Create app.config, so this is doing something different, and app config is going to have an object called the route provider, and that's going to pass route provider and put your content in here. So that's another object that does magic with AngularJS. That can get complicated, but it's really for your convenience. So for you to use that in the app, you also need, we're going to include our first dependency injection called ng-route. So these two are in dependencies, and they are working when you include ng-route as a module. So these are the module, this is your module, and then this is you're including a module from Angular. But before it works, you also need to add it as a script. So the script is located in the same location, but has a different name. So from the AngularJS CDN, type in angular dot route dash route dot min dot js, and there you go, the route is included. So for that to work, I'm going to use the route provider object and call a function called when. So this when function takes a few things, a few parameters. The first one is going to be the URL. So for just the home page, you want to call a template URL. So these files that we created are templates according to AngularJS. And to call them, we'll do main.html. And as you saw in the div here before, we had ng controller, but another way to include it is using the route provider. So when main.html loads, we can use the controller that we have included called main ctrl. Okay, and copy this over 2 more times. And set it up for create and play, and then change this to create and this to play. However, we will be using the same controller for all of them. Now, if someone types in something here, create, you don't see it yet, but you definitely want to include a default location, so when something else happens, it's called just the otherwise method. And redirect is the property redirect to. So whenever someone types in a random URL, they'll be redirected to the home part. So when you go to a different URL, you'll use the pound, or the bang as some people call it, and it loads the play.html, and then create, it loads the create. If you type in anything else, it goes back to the root, like we have the instructions for it to do so. So now that we have that working, let's add a menu, and that's going to come from this file, the main.html. So when you go here, your main.html, we're going to add links. So they're just A tags with the pound / create, And the same thing with play/play. Save that file, check it to see if it works. There is the menu with the CSS code. So play goes to that and create goes to that. So everything is working so far. And let's get a little bit cleaner with our code. So take what you have in this section, cut it, and you're going to put it into an external file called app.js. So now it's pasted, and actually take out the controller. We're going to put the controller into the controller file. So make sure you have a controller.js file, and that way our code is more modularized. For now, you're done with the config section. So in the HTML index file, make sure you include that source as js.app.js, and do the same thing for the controller. Save it, make sure it's working. Yep, it's still there, it's working. Congratulations, you have learned the AngularJS directives, view, ng app, ng controller, and on to the next section.